Yes, Bharat. So I just called up Satyaki sir. He's busy with a shooting schedule right now. Is it audible?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
So he's busy with a shooting schedule. So
Okay.
he will be joining us shortly.
Okay, sure.
It's better we should start because it's 4:05 already.
Yeah, sure, sure. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So
So
let
yeah. Okay. So you start. It's your platform, Bharat.
okay, cool. All right. So let me share my screen. Does that work that way?
Yes. Yes. Sure. Sure. Sure.
Cool. All right. Let me know once you can see my screen, right? MJ?
Yeah. It's visible.
All right, cool. So yeah. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. And I would personally, it's an absolute pleasure, first of all, to be. It feels like home coming back to IT Kanpur students and sharing experience and like that. And secondly, I'm very thankful to Satyaki sir, MJ, and like everyone who's thought of me, as to be able to share my experiences and learnings with all. So yeah, that second and third, I think they should just continue. It's kind of a start. I think it's a really good start, and I would really look forward for for any discussion whatsoever. And yeah, that's about it. So as soon as MJ reached out to me with the asking for sharing something, I started retrospecting, right? So I was looking, I was kind of, it was a quick pass through my whole professional journey, and I was trying to understand what inspired me, what are the influences and everything. So that's how this title is, and that's what this title is about. So it's called the Medici effect in design, right? And not so much, I'd connect it to design later, but what I like to say is that there are two specific events. So you listen, or you there are some historical events or some events which you experience, and they influence you, right? They influence you, inspire you. So these are two events which, when I first read about, of course I wasn't there to witness it in person, because it's really historic. But whenever I read about him, I got really influenced by it, because it shaped my thought process. It shaped a lot of decisions which I took, which helped me, move ahead in my career. So the first effect, I mean, the first event is, for that we have to go back to ancient Greece, and this is the map that you're looking at is actually Roman Empire at that time. And once you start zooming out, you understand the context where it sits. I mean, geographically, right? And at that time, it was a really good trade hub. That was it, that was because of its topography and because of its geography, it was a really good trade hub. And not just that, it was a melting point of cultures, because a lot of different people from all around, from Asia Minor, or from north of Africa and from above. So everywhere people will come, meet, trade things, and there'll be discussions and change, and exchanging ideas and perspectives. And there'll be talks like, hey, I don't believe in God because and the other person will be like, if you don't believe in God, you'll be dead. So there'll be conflicting discussions and things like that. So what that did, you know that trade actually, that trade kind of it was a medium for a lot of exchange of ideas, exchange of different ideas and perspectives. And that is essentially nothing, but it's questioning everything. So which gave birth to philosophy, as we know. Because from Socrates to Pluto to a lot of different philosophers, where all the whole concept of thinking and questioning things started because of that simple fact that that trade grew, and there was a it was a it was a melting point of cultures, like I said. So from there, this was the first event, right? The second event, we go back to 13th and 17th century, and this is what the title is about. So the slide before you is actually the Medici family, which was a very prosperous and wealthy family at that time. And at that time, there was the concept of patrons and commissions and commissioning arts and getting your own portraits done and stuff like that. So this was pretty popular back then. But one, this family was really rich, and second, that this family was also really invested and interested in art and culture. So they started commissioning a lot of different artists, that be painters and sculptors and whatnot. So they started coming to Florence, and then they started creating their art. And not just creating, but they started looking at each other's work, and then they got inspired a lot, right? And that then this became the precursor to, what we see in the slide, that is Michelangelo to Da Vinci to Botticelli. So a lot of this is basically, you can say, as the precursor of Renaissance, right? So these two events really, there's a common theme between two, which is, exchange of ideas, getting inspired from each other, and it's questioning your existing beliefs and things like that. So, and there's an author called Franz Johansson. So he's written this wonderful book called The Medici Effect. That's where I got to know about it. So he speaks about it in the current context, and he says that, innovation happens at the crossroads of technologies, of people, of culture, of different perspectives. So that's the whole point. And whenever I read the ancient Greece one, I read before, like long back, but Medici Effect was, more recent. So these two events, whenever I read, I was really influenced by them. And I think these two is what I'm going to talk about, but in the context of design. And how it comes to design, I'll talk to you about it. But let's just look at my professional life, I mean professional career so far, so as to get an understanding in how it affected me, right? And also I would like to share that with you, because not only because I hope that it'll kind of give you an insight uh, into the daily life of a designer, what he does, and uh, what are the different activities he does, not just from a theoretical or a subjective or a book point of view, but it's more an story narrative. So let's get into that. So a short prologue. So this is actually my whole uh, educational plus professional career. Started with mechanical engineering, went to Mahindra and Mahindra, and that's I was doing engineering design back then, and I was dreaming of designing cars. I didn't really understand the difference. I was not very I was pretty ignorant about the whole concept of how design differentiates from engineering design. So that was my imagination. I started working on a small part somewhere on a chassis mount or engine mount, I think. And I was not really liking it, because it was during inductions that a lot of different teams come, lot of different department comes, and they start giving talks, right? So the design team came there, and they were like, they were speaking about inspirations and going to Africa, going to Sahara, and taking pictures and drawing things, and I was like, wow. So that's where I got inspired, first of all. And second, I wanted to understand that why am I making this part, why not some other part, or who decides that I have to make this, and why am I not involved in the decision making, or in the vision of that whole project or product that I'm working on. So that kind of kick started my interest into design. And from there I joined IT Kanpur. I studied 2 years, and I was really passionate, like you could have understood. I was really passionate about product design and or automobile design, and kind of struck. I mean, I used to think that skill matters a lot, like sketching and modeling and all. So I spent countless hours doing that, but at the same time I was doing curriculum also. So I was going through the regular lectures, and taking workshops, like Jumki Anger takes the workshop. So all those workshop lectures and classes and everything. So I used to think that that's important. I mean, the skills are important, but unknowingly, the lectures and that workshop and everything, it was kind of building uh, the design thinking and the design mindset at the backdrop. But I was still very focused on skills like sketching and modeling. So after, like, I filed a patent there, a research paper, did 2 internships. I worked hard, but after that I didn't get placed, like Prakam, I think the last talk, at the campus. And then fortunately LG Electronics posted a vacancy, and I was able to appear for it and finally land a job in LG Electronics. So from here, I think it's where it gets serious. And what I'm going to do, I'll just tell you how it proceeds further. So I'm going to start with my uh, what I did in that particular chapter, and what are my learnings from there. And there are 4 chapters like that. So 2 of them in LG Electronics, and 1 of them in CA Technologies, which was later acquired by Broadcom. So it's pretty much the same company. And then 1 at OnePlus. So it's just 4 chapters and 4 different kind of designs, and my learnings from there. And then we'll connect it to how the whole the talk is about. It's the Medici effect. So the first chapter, LG Electronics, and that's product design. Okay, all right. So moving further, yeah. So I like to speak about it, and I was very happy, right? The first time I landed my dream job. I was working for a product company. I will get to design product, sketch and ideate and do everything. So I still remember clean and clear, the moment I made the first sketch in the industry and I put it up on the mood board. I know where the mood board is. I know where the people are standing and where I'm standing. And I look at it and it's so shameful. I mean, I was really disappointed with the kind of sketch I made and how it compared or fared against all other different sketches and thing. So that was kind of the first what do you say, the first setback, and where I understood that, hey, design, skills, I suck. So that's okay. But anyway, I'll tell you about the first case study. So in product design, we used to work for consumer electronics, we used to work for kitchen appliances. So it just it's all over the place. It's home electronics, home appliances, everything. So this particular project is about water purifier design. And and just don't worry about grasping a lot of it. It'll be more like a story. I'll come back to the important things. So it's just the business team and the product, everyone comes to us and says that we need to identify some potential gaps, potential need gaps in conventional water purifier. So we need to come up with some USPs because we want to enter a new segment of market, not the premium water purifier that we are already in. We want to get into medium segment. So we want a USP, a feature that is actually functional and useful to the user. So we set it, so that got it started. And the methods that we use, so it started with the research and how we went. So far wherever I've worked, I've pretty much taken up a product and then started it from research and all the way to the delivery. So it's I have taken up for some projects once in a while. I have done just research or just design. But I would say 80% of my projects or products that I've worked on so far in my professional journey, it's been from research to design and delivery. So this started with the user research. So obviously we want to understand the context. So we did diary studies and we did pure observation, in-depth interviews. And then once from there we got back, we took everything like the images, we took a lot of data from the field, and all that research we took back to this desk. We analyzed it, took insights out, then we created some concepts. Then we took it for phase 2, which is actually the evaluation. And that's when we did user evaluation through CLT, that is closed location testing. So the concept is pretty much like focus group study, but wherein you call a group of large gathering of prospective users and you bring them into a one room, and then you show concepts and get them talking and speaking and getting feedback about it, right? And then there's like yeah, and then there is these are like questionnaires and surveys and whatever stimuli we created for that discussion guide and all. And from there we got some results. And just I would just give I think it's um, a lot of the data that you see, it's been recreated later because I actually do not have all that data. So whatever I imagine or whatever I remember from that case study back then, I just recreated those using illustrations and whatever, right? So from there we came back with a lot of data, right? So there'll be demographic profiles and what their kitchen layouts are like. So we'll draw it out, where is the sink placed, where's the water purifier placed, what is the wall like, and where is the dining room, how close is the fridge, understanding the whole environment. Then we also did a diary study. And what happens in a diary study is you give the user a diary and you ask them to note down certain patterns or certain things, because you can't be there with them, observing them or shadowing them throughout the usage of the product, right? For in 24 hours, if the purifier is being used, you can't be there. So for such situations, we would use a diary study. So we will hand them the diaries and they will be writing down observations, right? For example, when they used it for drinking, when they used it for cooking, when they did not use it, or if they turned on or turned off the purifier, right? So they'll just write it down in plain language, and we'll come back and we'll analyze that whole data and we kind of map it. So that's where you see this diagram, and we'll understand that where it's not being used, where it's being used for just consuming water as drinking, or where it's used for cooking, and when it's switched on or switched off. So this kind of gives a lot of different insights. So from there we again made some concepts, we took it to the users, we did Kano analysis just to understand. We had a lot of features, right? We came up with like 5 to 6 features, and we wanted to understand which one is better, which one is not so good. So we did a Kano analysis, we did a research again, evaluative research with the users, and there were certain features that came up, and then we took it further. And another thing, I'd just take a break and I'd like to say is that a lot of the stuff that I'll be talking about will be a little more about research, because I think for two reasons. One is, I think it's just to represent the smaller community of research that is out there. I think we already have wonderful various alumni already coming up, like Adesh, Pragam, and everyone who are already speaking a lot about design. So I just wanted to give that perspective of research. And also secondly, because it requires a lot of that initial thinking where you start from, because obviously it precedes design in terms of product design pipeline. So I think that thinking I'd be able to share if I talk about research. So I'm not really actually talking about how it took it to design, and then how we designed the whole thing, and how we did testing again and everything else, but pretty much research. So yeah, so this is just one example, but similar to this, there are a lot of different products, be it be it speakers or televisions or phones or home electronics and kitchen appliances, say refrigerators, washing machines, and all microwaves, like Praga mentioned, right? So a lot of all these products pretty much had this more or less the same process. There'll be smaller ones also, there'll be adaptive design changes, or there'll be designs from scratch, like this particular project that you see. But not necessarily, I mean, everyone is all the projects are similar, right? So with that, I'll tell you the key learnings from this one. So there are two key learnings. One, which I first imagined in IT Kanpur, like while I was studying, that design thinking is not a skill. The skills are actually skills, like sketching and modeling and all. So this is when I understood that design thinking is a skill, because I will not fare. So when I would compare myself against the team, right, I did not fare so much and so well in sketching, modeling, and skills like that. But I was doing well. I was doing fair in terms of design thinking, in terms of ideating, conceptualizing, and the whole research process and how design should follow it. And then the second part is the second learning I would probably say is that problem well understood is 50% solved. This was said by I think Thomas Kettering or someone. I think it's said by an American entrepreneur, Thomas Kettering. So I actually believe this really, and that's why if you see that, like I said, that I'm talking about that 50% more. It's just understanding the problem, and that I understood very well in LG Electronics, because while at college I would pretty much, I would just speak for myself, that I would pretty much give it equal weightage, and I would be very involved in that ideation phase, or skills and everything else that follows research. But what I feel that what is more hard, I would say harder than that follows, is this part, which is understanding the problem. If something goes wrong here, then everything is just it's like Zenga, everything falls apart, right? So that's there. So I think that's chapter one. So chapter two is again in LG Electronics itself. So after nine months or an year or so, I was involuntarily transferred to the color, material, and finish department. That's called CMF in short in industry. And what happened is, I didn't ask for it, and it was just for some rotation reasons that I was asked to go to this particular department inside design itself. And I asked my managers, I was like, what do you think about it? Should I do it? I'm not really interested. And they were like, one guy I particularly remember, Avnish was my manager. Then he said that, give it a try, so give it a shot. So I was like, okay. So I started working on it. And why I was so hesitant is because color, material, finish is an entirely different, you have to just switch your mind, because this is something which is purely like, there is functional aspect to it, but there's a lot of aesthetic aspect to it. It's like you could imagine from the title itself, it's color, it's material is not which is stronger in bearing stress and all, but material in terms of what how much texture it is, which fades and which does not fades and stuff like that. And then there's finish, right? So this was pretty involuntary, but also the second difference was that this subject is very again, CMF is very subjective. So since it's aesthetic, right, so there's a lot of change in how you think and what are the processes involved and how you take up a project and proceed with it. So like in product, it's a lot of functionality is involved, right? I mean, physical functionality, because both of them are in physical products. I'm doing CMF for physical products only, right? So that's that. So I'll show you a quick example, a quick case study of the second phase. So this was for a washing machine, and we wanted to identify new opportunities in washing machine color, like material and finish application, right? So that started with again the same process. We went for a user intent research because we didn't know anything about about pretty much the market in terms of this particular project. So we wanted to understand the user, it's his environment, what are his different influences. So we did a competition study, that is to understand the market. We did a trend study, and trend study, it's I mean, this is actual, this is as per fact that when we would do trend study, we would actually start from interior designs to fashion design to actually even automotive. We'll go to the auto expo actually, and then take pictures, what textures, what materials are in trend or are upcoming and stuff like that. Then not just that, we'll do a lot of field research also. So we'll do a lot of contextual inquiry, go to the market, see the product in the store, go to the house, see the product in use. Then we'll do a lot of in-depth interviews, just asking explanations for the observations that we'll make in contextual inquiry, right? So all that just to get a lot of data and understand the scenario and the subject. The phase two is after. So from there we come back again, pretty much like the first case study. We'll come back and then we'll make concepts, and then again we'll take it to the take it for user evaluations. So this, I just don't remember the data exactly, but what we'll do is basically we'll leverage a lot of other stakeholders. For example, if you want to evaluate a particular product, right, where do you take it? Which particular users or demographics are actually important? So how do you know, right? So where does it sell? If you take it to a city where it doesn't sell at all, then what would your understanding be of, like, the market of semi-automatic washing machine doesn't exist to a city, then what's the point of going there, right? So we'll speak to the sales team, we'll identify the important zones, and then we'll go, we'll divide it based on our previous understanding that a certain sect works in a certain way. For example, the color and trend preferences in Delhi and in northern India are pretty different from what happens in south, or from what happens in Kolkata and east. So from based on that, we'll identify the zones, we'll take it for user evaluations. As you can see, some samples we'll take, and we'll get some feedback. From there we'll come back with the results. So this, if I remember correctly, that's how we would it's an example of how we could uh, you know uh, find insights from the data, right? From just the data, regular data. So this is a competition study, just what all is there. But this kind of gives you an idea of where is the market present, like what colors are this particular brand in, or what color is this particular brand in. And then not just that, then what colors are selling more and what colors are not selling more. They could be like 5 different colors into the market but are not selling more. So you just get an idea and understanding of the whole market situation, the selling point of view, right? And also the evaluation from the users will come back with the different colors samples. So these are like representative again. So C1 would be a certain color, C2 will be a certain color, and all these colors, and these are like cities. So city A, B, C, D, right? So we'll go to, for example, 4 cities, we'll do an evaluation. So we'll mark, for example, in this city this particular color was liked a lot, and this particular geography this color was liked a lot. So it's a lot of data analysis, right? So that's about it. From there we'll have enough idea and enough understanding of what to do or what to not do, right? And then we'll take it to design. And then that's a separate process again. You make mock-ups, like physical mock-ups, prototypes, you again test it, and the whole process of designing starts. So that's second case study. And that's just an example of the breadth of projects that we have worked on. So for example, it's very functional, and something like which Pragam mentioned, like microwave oven to water purifier to refrigerators. So these are the projects that I've worked in, right? And moving on, the key takeaways from the CMF side, right? So one thing which I understand is, with high stakes come high responsibility. And why I would say is it would make a lot more sense when I actually move into the next chapter. But I would like to say it here that, I'll like to state the example. So what happens is, in physical products, or in the space of physical products, there are in terms of prototyping, or in terms of creating concept, it actually takes a lot of time and money and everything, like resources. But also, for example, something like a die, right? So you make a die, and a die costs what? Like, it doesn't cost cheap, right? It comes in 20s, 30s lakhs, or in crores. It goes up to that amount. So if you get something wrong, and if you sign if you sign approval for that, like as a designer have done that, like I had to be very cautious in terms of what I'm approving as a design, because if that gets wrong, then that die once produced will, all that goes to trash. There's no way of editing it or going back and quickly changing things, which is not so much as the case in software, right? In software you can roll out designs and it's pretty agile, whereas in product it's still not very agile. And the second thing is qualitative expands and quantitative quantitative narrow. So this came after, because in the last slide, as I showed, right, there's a lot of analysis that we have to do, a lot of data analysis and driving insights and everything. So what I mean by qualitative expands and quantitative narrows is that, I don't know if you have heard of, there's a process called double diamond method, and there are a lot of other theoretical methods you will see, you will study about. So wherein, you always have to pick one thing, that are you going to do a qualitative research, or are you going to do a quantitative research, or is the data that we want to collect is qualitative, or it's quantitative. So what I understand is, the main difference is, qualitative is meant to expand your understanding. It's meant to expand your knowledge of the domain, of the user, of the scenario. And quantitative usually is supposed to, narrow it down. It's supposed to bring you to a smaller set of outcomes, or to narrow down your research findings and stuff like that. So one example would be that if I'm doing interviews, I'll do it with 5 people. That'll be a qualitative study, because you're asking qualitative questions, and that'll be just with a few people, and that's meant to broaden your understanding about the subject, about what's happening with the user, his behavior, attitude, and everything. And quantitative is like a survey. You do 500 people, 1,000 people, just for an understanding of what is the mass opinion about this topic. You don't expand your knowledge, but you want to come down to a conclusion, right? So that's the learnings from there. Chapter 3, CA technologies, right? So what happened here is, by this time, 4 years in the industry, and pretty much doing everything, I was kind of, the learning curve was kind of flattening, and I wanted to, and everyone else around me, like all my friends, as you know, are were already in software domain. And I had worked on a research paper back in college, I remember, that was on experience trade-off with technological advancements, right? And my understanding from there was, as the interface kind of shrinks, I mean shrinks in not just real estate, but in time, in the in the types of different, like sensory communication that it does to you and you interacted with, it becomes more hard. The cognitive load increases, right? So I wanted to experience that. I always looked up at it. I'd never kind of thought that, I mean, software is easy or something like that. I always felt that that's hard, because, once again, the interface is small, everything has to be worked through there, and it's more challenging, I felt. So I wanted to move to something. And also I was working in product domain. I mean, that's physical products, and which is, consumers buy a product, like you will buy a washing machine from LG Electronics from us, and then you'll go and use it. But CA Technologies works in a kind of setup that is commonly called as enterprise solutions, or in other words, it could be called business to business kind of operating model. So what that does is basically, you're making a product which is meant to be used by another, as B2B. It's called business to business. As a business, you're making solutions which is supposed to be used by another business. So there's still a user. That's one of the big myths. So I wanted to just understand that. Anyway, let's proceed with that. So one case study. So I wanted to understand one case study. I wanted to show you one case study, but here's the main difference, right? So this is the product that I so this was the new product for me. So far, whatever products I had, you seen them, right? So now I come to this, and this is what I have to work with. So how do I start? Where do I start? So I started drawing, product demos, and I started taking product demos. I started doing site maps, and understand the functionalities and how does it whole work, because usually enterprise solutions are very complex. So that's how I started. And then in terms of one case study, it will be really hard, because one, they are not as long. So in LG Electronics, one research and design product altogether would last for somewhere around 6 to 8 months. It'll be very thorough, very intensive, and it'll be process by process. Wherein here, there were not really many such projects wherein I could show you one example of each. But I'd rather show that what are the common things that I did. So we did a lot of design sprints, right? So why design sprints? Because one, like, if I remember correctly, I think even Pragam mentioned and talked about it, about agile. And that's the whole concept. In software, you move fast, right? And again, uh, uh, getting hold to users and doing 6 month long field research with users, all that is not possible. So you quickly want to work on your products, improve them within a short time frame, and then just proceed. So then the other things was heuristic evaluations, again, because it's so hard to get hold of users, and the whole concept is very new there. You do a lot of heuristic evaluations, wherein you as a designer take assume this role of a user, and from the point of view of usability, you evaluate the design, the product or the concept based on certain heuristics. Heuristics are basically certain principles that, hey, what kind of visibilities does system visibility does it give? Like, is it showing you, is it giving you enough feedback and stuff like that? Then there's a lot of usability testing, which is the most that probably I did it here. So all this, right? So all these three measures, all going to the field, asking to the users, and does it work for you? Does it not work for you? Change to this. Wherein it's mostly just remote. Me sitting on one side of the computer, the other user probably sitting on another side of the computer, and we're showing screens and evaluating. So a lot of this usability testing, this is called remote testing and remote moderated, I would say, because I'm also there, and we are testing concepts, right? So that's the kind of research, and that's the kind of the work that I did, just a day in the life, right? And then the key takeaway. So I think there's a lot here because it was a very 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 big change in the paradigm, a very very big paradigm shift. So first thing is that is design thinking is adaptive with respect to limitations, subject, users, and scenarios. So my understanding of design thinking there and how it works, the process and everything, it kind of, I feel that it adapts. So you would say that there's limitations, right? So one common understanding, like I said, is a lot of people say, I mean, some might not agree with me, but a lot of time it's said that enterprise solutions do not have many users. I mean, it's hard to get hold of users. Yes, that's true, but there's the concept of customer and there's problem. But user will always be there. If you are making a product, your user could be another business, but that's again a user, right? It's a limitation in how you interact with them, or how you get hold of them and things like that. That's logistics, but it's there. So that's limitations. Then what kind of subjects there are, what are the different users and scenarios? So it kind of just adapts. Then usability testing is often a lazy excuse for lack of primary research. I think this do not get me, don't get me wrong here. I know that usability testing is very important because you have a concept, you want to evaluate it, right? But it's a very common trend across a lot of other industries wherein uh, usability testing is the go-to thing. I mean, and I think that's just a lazy excuse for primary research, because you take a concept and then you show it, you ask for feedback, right? Uh,
Bharat, can I, hello, yeah.
Hi.
Can you just repeat this sentence at least 5 times?
Okay, sure. I think I understand what you mean, sir. So
Yeah.
yes, I feel so. I feel so, and I strongly feel so. And I thought that it could be a little offending, but I really just wanted to go and put it out there.
That's extremely important. That's extremely important.
Right. Okay. So moving on, I think the third point was enterprise is not equal to no user, like I said above, right? And then difference between software and hardware is not physical but cognitive. This is what I was speaking to you earlier about, right? The common understanding or the first impression that you get, a physical object is physical, you interact with it, and everything, and software is software, right? But it's more about the interaction medium, right? How it happens, and it generates a kind of cognitive load when it comes to software. So I understood that difference, and I got experience in first hand. So moving on, I think we good on time. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, cool. So chapter 4, I think OnePlus mobile operating system, right? So again, a shift. And this shift was in terms of earlier I was working on web-based solutions. So every enterprise solution is not, necessarily so, but in CA technologies, because of the dashboards and everything being so complex, a lot of solutions are mostly constrained to web solutions. And then so that changed to mobile here. And the thing about mobile and why I changed here is because I was kind of missing a lot of action, because consistently going to the field research, speaking to the users, and all that thing. So that's one reason I wanted to make this move. And also because there'll be a jump, because mobile is something wherein there is a physical product. So you actually have to work on the physical product, how you work with it, how you hold it, how you operate it, and then also the software aspect to it. So it's pretty interlinked. So that's when I made the move into OnePlus. And okay, so these are pretty much everyday examples of what I'm working on. So messages, cricket scores, work-life balance, and I mentioned only these three because these are India specific projects, and which are developed by India. And there are certain features which have been created and designed and worked upon, thinking about the Indian demography, the specific use cases, and as such. So what I would like to do is and this is not a sponsored talk by OnePlus, but I would like to appreciate the fact that OnePlus is a very community driven organization. They really are so much in touch with community. Recently I worked so there is a concept of open ear forum, which is wherein you interact with your users. So it happens once, it happens every year, and this year we did it online, and I was able to speak to 25 selected participants from 1200 people on the community. We all got together and designed a workshop for them, and they went through it, and we were able to interact, get a lot of ideas and things like that. So that's just one example. And instead of showing you a case study, I'd like to show you one. So as you know, that Nord was recently launched, right? OnePlus Nord, and there's a 4-part kind of a documentary, or a video that they have published on Instagram. I've looked through it, and I've tried to cut short and I try to show you some snippets of it. So there you go. If I feel it's too long, I'd kind of skip it.
The audio is not playing.
Yeah, I think.
But we actually don't have any planned itinerary for our day there.
Ritunjay, are you able to hear now the audio?
Yeah. Yes. Now it was on.
And I'm just walking around.
So I would just interrupt for a second, and I'll tell you what the context is. So for this particular project, India played a big role as a big demographic and target user for this particular product, and that's where our co-founder visited India, and we were able to organize a whole research for it, and wherein he visited the stores, went there personally, interacted with the shopkeepers, pretty much what we did in LG Electronics, right? Similar to that. And then we also did focus group studies. We showed concepts to the users and did evaluation, stuff like that. So I just snipped the whole part, and it's only the relevant parts in here.
I'm talking to people, but we know nothing about that. How can we find out more, or where do we go? What phones are selling well right now?
iPhone, Vivo, Samsung, MI, all phones selling.
All phones selling.
Yes.
How can we help you sell more?
You can give some accessories in box. We have
Are they asking for that? We're showing up unannounced in stores, checking out how we're selling our phones and our competitors are selling theirs. And when you launch towards a new target consumer, you need to understand them. It's an aspiring culture, like we learned that today. And they like to belong. We like to signify their identity through their products. What I use is who I am. So that's quite interesting, I think.
We've now prepped the focus group material. We've developed different ways to present ourselves. And the focus group starts actually at 6. So we probably should get going quite soon.
My name is Jacob, and I've been working for some time with OnePlus. I'll moderate this session today. What do you feel instantly? And please pass around the microphone, and what kind of feeling do you get?
Lots of colors and kind of catches the eye, I feel.
The photos are so clear. People cannot afford DSLR. They would like a phone that has good camera quality, so they can click. It can be like job photographer or something.
This is a very low trust market. So nobody trusts anything, especially from locals. So you see people saying the local influencers, nobody trusts them. So we need to make people feel more safe somehow.
All right, so I think I'll stop there, the video, because the reason I showed this video is because, usually because of confidential reasons and so on, you usually don't get to, see this inside story, right? And this is pretty much actually what happened. I was there in that room and we were doing the focus group study. And that's the whole reason. So I'll share the link with Mrityunjay and you'll be able to see the whole documentary, I think. So moving on. So a summary of what has happened, right? So the first case study I showed to you, let me just make it full screen, right? Okay. So the first case study I showed to you was about a physical product. Then there was a color-material finished product, and then there was an enterprise solution, and then there was an operating system, right? So coming back to the whole, the title of the project, which is the Medici effect. And, as we saw there, when different perspectives, different subjects, different opinions, when they collide, right, it has a synergetic effect, and there's an exchange of ideas, and the whole thing builds more. So this is what I want to say about design thinking, right? So if you have read so far, and whatever you read further, if you read about design thinking, design mindset and all, what you will see, there's a lot of there are very broad and very vague words and terminologies and concepts explained in that way. And the one reason and the main reason for that is because it is so universal, and it so can be applied in different fields and in different ways. That's why it's thinking, right? And hence the concept broadens, right? So I just wanted to give you an insight into the different types of designs that there could be. There are possibly so many more, but I just wanted to show you 4 different ones. And as you can see, there are so many different variables there. The users are different, the timelines are drastically different. For example, sometimes it could be days within which you have to give, and there'll be 8 months or so. And then the objectives are different. Sometimes it's about USP, sometimes it's aesthetics, usability, sometimes it's about feature. And the research methods are incredibly different, because every time your requirement, your goals and objective change, the research methods change accordingly. So this pretty much sums up what I wanted to say about Medici effect, right? It's the fact that design thinking applies to a lot of places, and hence it becomes more diluted and more it becomes more relaxed in that manner. So what I want to do next is I want to talk to you about, with that whole the whole journey in backdrop, with my learning and my experiences across these different domains. I just wanted to share with you a very quick I would say an overarching approach to design research and to design thinking, right? And how I do it in practice every day with examples. And so just moving on. So this was the design process that I had earlier. This was actually what I used all the way up till all my time in LG Electronics. And if you could understand that from the different examples that I'm making, the illustrating, and the different terminologies that I've used. And that's the reason, once I started switching these domains, right, this kind of became very hard to follow, because up to LG Electronics I would really follow this and it would be my guideline. I just made this for me, for no one else. But after a point of while, it became pretty diverse. So that's why I would like to speak to you about design mindset, right? So for that, the first thing is a blank slate. And what I mean by that is, whenever you start any project, or whenever you start working on any product, you always are presented with a blank slate, right? So where do you start? So I would like to say that it's pretty much like approaching a mathematical equation or an algebraic equation, right? You have an x squared plus 2xy plus z is equal to what, right? So that what is what you want. So I would say that start with gathering as much information as you can, and which can possibly relate to the project or to the product that you can, right? So from everywhere. And what are these? So if you look at the equations, what are these called, right? These are called variables, right? And they're essentially the factors that contribute to that whole outcome that you want. So again, that's the approach that I want to say. Gather as much as you can, right, about the reactants in a chemical reaction, or the the components that contribute to the result. And so where do you start? So far, I think it wouldn't be wrong, because kind of whenever you work, even as a student, say, or whenever you are working on a personal project, you think that's you and the user, right? You start working from them. They have a problem, you start solving it, or you start enhancing their experience or whatever. It's just this that you think about, but it's more than that, right? So once you start thinking about the user, you start thinking about cost, about the peers, about the different trends, and the aspirations, everything that influences the user and his scenario and the thing that he works on. So you think about that, right? But what I want to talk to you specifically today is also that, there's an ecosystem around you too. And that is because, it's usually you're not just working alone. And even if you are working alone, you will be wearing different hats at different times. So you'll be wearing the hat of a development, like, how do I make this? I designed a concept, and how do I develop this? How do I create this? Then you'll also thinking about the business point of view that, hey, do I want to make money out of it? Or am I doing it for social cause? Or, things like that. And there'll be then the identity that, why am I doing this? And why can't I do something else? Why do I want to, design a beautiful glass, usable glass, or do I want to design an AR app or something like that, right? So that's the whole aspect. And so in applied industry, that's the different stakeholders, what we call. So this ecosystem is very important, and this is where you start, according to me. And like with the previous example, you gather as much information as you can about any project, and no matter how small a project is, I always try to give some time dedicated to this this particular area or this section. So from here, where do we go? We understand the context, and the context is simple as this: why are we doing this? It's about the goals and the objectives, or it's about the different factors that are driving the project. Sometimes it will be very business centered decision that we'll be working on. For example, we want to enter a market, and we want to enter product into this market so that more people can afford this. So for example, if you have a premium product, why don't we create a mid-segment product so that a lot of other people can afford it? So that could be the driving factor, which is driving your project. Or sometimes it is based on expected outcomes. So for example, if research, right? So sometimes it's as simple as A/B testing. For example, you have two concepts. The design wants to understand that which concept is better, right? So what is the expected outcome? Which concept is better? So, and it's not just as simple as why we're doing it. You really need to understand how all the elements that we spoke about, right, which are in the ecosystem, how are they all related, and how they're working together in the whole context of this project. So every time I actually ask for the context, no matter what project it is, whether it's a small 2-day project or whether it's it's a conception of a new idea, I always start with the context. Then moving on is the brief. So once you have the context, once you know everything about the different stakeholders in the ecosystem, and once you know what you're doing, it's very important to write a brief. And like I said, it's important to write the brief. And for in practice, I would just straight away tell you that these pointers that I'm writing in front of you are actually from something which I practice. So every time before a project, I need to know everything that's mentioned in here. I need to understand what is the background, what is driving this project. I need to understand what is the market that we are trying to pitch in, whether it's sometimes some projects will not require, for example, an A/B testing may not require you to ask so much, but there will be other things that is required. For example, you would not want to know the schedule of the A/B testing, right? Within how much time is the result expected of this? So there's target user, there's competition, like how many different players are in the market. Then what are the different key facts we know? Key facts are like facts, for example, this is the daily active user rate for this particular application. So get everything down there. Then the challenges and the problems faced currently by the product or the service or the thing that you're working on, and not just the exact thing that you're working on, but everything around it. And goals and objectives and mandatories, budgets and budget schedule. I think it's more logistics and things like, how do you get this into while conducting the research or while conducting the project, how do you do it? But that's, so essentially this is required because what it'll do, it will define your boundaries. It will help you shape the next thing, which is the research plan, right? But before I proceed to the research plan, what I want to mention about is secondary research. And why? Because it's, according to me, again, it's the most underrated of all research methods out there. And why underrated? And it's also underappreciated and underutilized. And what is secondary research, right? Secondary research is, I would like to say that secondary research is basically a researcher's homework. So how can you make, or how can you work on something when you yourself don't understand the product, or even when you yourself don't understand service, although you understood the ecosystem and everything, right? What about the product? How does it work? And what about the different expert opinions and everything else around it? So this is very important, and it doesn't take long. Even if I have a 3-day project, I sincerely dedicate 3 or 4 hours in the first day just to do secondary research before I start thinking about what research method to use or what do we do. And it's pretty common trend that in the industry people will be like, just take it to the users, can we quickly float a survey, or can we. So people tend to dive straight into the research method and just get going. But I feel that it's important to do this part on your behalf, right? And it's one of the most underrated. So that's why it's not a part of the research plan also. So moving on is the research plan, which is the most, I think, complicated, most essential, and most focused, and which is in the most limelight, is the research plan. So questions like, what research method do I use? What is the right sample size? How much time will the research take? And these are actually, pretty much also like, I don't know, interview questions. So if you go to job interviews, they'll ask you, what research methods do you use for this particular scenario? Or what do you think is the ideal sample size for this? So what I want to say is that, I'm talking about the mindset, right? I'm talking about thinking. So if you have actually understood everything that followed up to this point, if you understand the context, why we are doing the project, what is driving the project, what is expected of the project, then this is pretty much, it's very logical. It's like reasoning. And I would like to say this, that, user empathy is given a very prominent value in design, that you have to empathize with the user, right? But at the same time, what I want to say, that in research, you have to actually think like a machine. And I feel it. You have to think in digital, like 0 or 1. So that, you don't empathize with you empathize with the overarching theme, that you're doing it for something else. It's not art as such, that you're doing it for your pleasure, or to stimulate something. It's more like design, wherein you're actually doing it for something, for someone else. So, and the approach to it is, I would like to say that start by interpolating from the result. So what I mean to say is, think about the quality, or what do you exactly need. From there, you backtrack. So for example, if you want to understand behavior, then you want to think about behavior research. If you want to conclude something, if you want to assist the management or your organization or yourself into decision making, then you think about methods which are quantitative, which help you narrow down, different options. So that's like that. And then, for example, sample size, right? This is the formula for sample size. If you go on for the studying, this is the actual sample size formula. And this is a very this is one of the toughest questions, I think, which is asked everywhere, and where people get stuck, that they can't think of actually giving a right answer, like one fixed answer, that if they ask that how many people will you conduct this research with, you can't just say 400 or 300 or 25 or 5. So, but if you have the research right, if you have the approach right, then you wouldn't actually look at this as a formula. You would look at this as the different factors that are in this, variables that are there in this formula. For example, what is E? What is P? What is Z? What are they talking about? What are the different things that are important to understand? So, for example, like probability, right? So, for example, if you are asking a question like if you ask 10 people that how many of you prefer an apple over an orange, right? You would get an answer. If you ask 100 people, you would get an answer. If you ask 1,000 people, you'll get an answer. The more number of people you ask, the more confident you'll be. And that's what it's about, right? And then it's about the total number of population. And so these are the different factors that you need to understand, right? And then moving ahead, once you're done with the research plan, you know how to proceed. You know what are the different research methods. You start by creating stimuli. That'll be like questionnaires, surveys, wireframes, color samples, prototypes, and whatnot. Again, here the only one of the key suggestions that I like to give is, again, think like a machine. Have empathy in the motivation about the project, but not in the process, because that brings in a lot of bias. While you're making questionnaire, I remember that even today, when I'm creating questionnaire for a survey, a lot of times I create questionnaire, I think that this is pretty obvious, and then I'll be like, oh, there's a confirmation bias in there. For example, look at this. How are you managing stress during this pandemic, right? If you take this question to the users, I'm taking very current thing. So if you ask this question, how are you managing stress during this pandemic, you're already too empathized. You are already imagining that there is stress, although it could be understood. But like I said, that particular person may be actually enjoying work from home, and he'll be happy that it's not just you. So that is what I'm talking about, thinking like a machine. Then screening, recruiting, and scheduling. So once you have the stimuli ready, it's just about the participants, which person do I approach, and what are the different users, who should I go to evaluate this particular concept or research. So what's this 50th, 50th, 95th, and power, right? These are actually terminologies for different types of users, right? And it's not important to actually understand this, but I mean, to actually use this, that I will be doing research with 50th percentile user, or I will be doing research with only power user. But if you have the right thinking or the right approach in your head, you will know that if I want to understand the different ways that this product is being used, right, you will want to use power users because you want as much input as in there. So that's just the mindset. And again, in conducting the same thing, for example, again, I would say that you have to actually think like a machine. So like think in 0 1, not like in analog. So one common observation, like one quick example I'll give you, that when, if imagine I'm taking an interview and there's a user, right, I'm talking and I'm asking questions. So there is a habit of saying right, yeah, you're giving affirmations to the users, right? So things like that are wrong. And then instead, so one time I remember clearly that I was just kind of silent. I read about it and then I was sitting silent. So silence is awkward. So user starts filling in that silence by giving more feedback and more input and explaining his concepts in more detail. So things like that, right? And then that's just the end. So I would not explain much. As I said, understanding the problem at front is more. Transcribing, summarizing, and drawing insights are, it depends on the project, and it depends on finding common patterns and stuff like that. And once you share, but it doesn't actually end there, I'd like to give you one last thing, that is track. Always track back your work. Where is it going and what is happening with it, and how much value did it bring to the whole system and things like that. So yes, that's all I think. So like I said, I think I would be really happy if later on also we like to be really engage in such discussions and all. Cool.
It was really nice to see you tracking back your experience for the last couple of years. The last part was really very nice. In fact, I have with me one of my colleagues, Professor Shantanu Mishra.
Hi. It was wonderful listening to you.
Thank you.
Just pass by if you come to the campus anytime. I'd like to meet and talk to you.
Sure. That'll be my pleasure.
Right. So I think, yeah, this has been really an enriching talk, I would say, even for me.
Thank you, sir.
And good to see you working on really varied domains. So I would keep it open for the students to ask questions now.
Sure. Yeah.
Are the students typing the questions?
Not yet. Nobody has typed anything as of now. I'm hoping that somebody will ask a question. Yeah.
Right, here is one question from Shantanu.
Oh no, who is here?
Yeah.
Bharat. Hello. Hello, Bharat. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah. He will get connected. I think there's some internet issue.
Okay. So Mrityunjay is coordinating.
Yeah, he's calling. I think his internet got disconnected. He's typing, so he will just connect in 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, Nikhilesh has a question. So first, let the students ask it.
Yeah.
মানে সায়েন্সে এই ধরনের জিনিসটাই বলে, কিন্তু ওর অ্যাপ্রোচটা পুরো অন্য, কর্পোরেট।
Mrityunjay, was it Ankit?
Ankit Belchandan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's there. Hey, Ankit.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
How are you?
All good, sir. How are you?
Oh,
good to see you. Good to see you.
We also have Kulwant Singh here.
Hi, Dikha, Kulwant ko dikha.
हेलो सर.
Hello, Kulwant. How are you?
अच्छा हूँ सर. आप कैसे हैं?
बस मस्त है.
Kulwant Singh is married now.
I know.
सारी खबर पहुंच रहा है सर.
सारी खबर रखता हूँ सबका. So, कहाँ गया भरत? कहाँ गया?
देखो पावर कट वो यहाँ पे पावर कट हुआ है तो भी थोड़ा सा वो आपका लग रहा होगा.
There is a power cut. He'll be joining. This.
Okay.
I'm in the same society, so. Hello, sir.
All right.
You all are living there right now?
Me, Vaibhav, and Bharat, Manisha, Kirti.
Okay.
So we
2015.
5-6 folks are here. Haan. 6 IIT folks.
Me and Pankaj are in
हाँ, they're also nearby. So.
अभी इन कैंपस तो बेचारा मृत्युंजय अकेला पड़ गया है.
नहीं सर, मैं कल घर जा रहा हूँ.
Okay, Bharat is back. I think.
Yeah, Bharat is back, so I think we should.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Bharat.
Yeah.
There are some questions for you.
Okay, cool. I think there's one question that I see, which is what is the proper method of usability testing in industry other than heuristic evaluation, right? So actually, there are a lot of proper methods for usability testing, and it's pretty much similar to, I would say in, do you mean to say that, like I explained a lot of different methods, right? It depends on the particular subject that you're working on, or it depends on the particular, different outcomes that you're expecting out of it. So for example, usability testing could be a remote usability testing, remote moderated usability testing, or so there are like lots. I don't know how to answer this, but it's like heuristic evaluation is, I wouldn't say it's actually usability testing. It'll be wrong to kind of actually categorize it as usability testing, because usability testing is kind of incomplete without user, right? And you can't take the shoe of a user. So I mean, it's the role of user. So heuristic evaluation is more like you trying to understand with the flow and with the in the proper manner that what would happen if probably if a particular person is using a product or service, right? Yeah, does that answer the question? Okay.
So he's asking once again.
Yes. Cool. Right.
Hi, he got the answer. There are 2 more questions. Varun has answered that
Right.
contextual inquiry can be used. We have 2 more questions, Bharat, since you missed the call.
Sure.
So do users agree for diary studies of we have to give some incentives?
Okay, right. So usually I think I mentioned the budget point, right? And that's important because it's often kind of overlooked and not utilized in the right manner. But you are asking for someone for something. User is using your product, so he's not liable, or I mean, it's not what do you say? He doesn't have to kind of answer you without an incentive, and it would be right approach to actually give him incentive. So what we used to do is, like, for this particular project, we will be actually taking help from some agencies. Like there are research agencies like Ipsos, there is Hansa, and there is market research, and a lot of different agencies. So what they do is they help you in scheduling, in hiring, in recruiting different participants. So you give them the brief, like what is the demographic, what is the profile, what kind of user that you're looking for, and then they help, because for something like software wherein you have the IDs, you have every data about the user, right? So it's easier to get in touch. But especially when you're talking about products like washing machines or refrigerators, and when you're talking about prospective users, not your current users, or users of some other competition, and at that times it's really hard to get into the field and find users. So at that time we had agencies involved, and so we pay the agency, and then the agency incentivizes the user for participating in the diary studies. Okay.
There is one more question, Bharat.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel contrast? I don't know what does it mean, but this is what it's written.
Divyash, uh, can you explain, Divyash, what exactly are you meaning by that?
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Am I audible? Sorry,
Hi.
I couldn't write the complete question.
Sure.
I was asking that do you ever feel constrained in terms of what is in your mind for a design and what's required for the users and what company demands?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a very important question. Like, that's a very good question, because a lot of times, like I said, that it's not like art, right? It's not something that you're making for yourself, right? So I remember, I'll give you a case study, an example. So you remember the slide I shared? I would be able to share it again also, wherein I used to work on a lot of floral designs for washing machines, and the and by contrast, none of my refrigerators ever had floral designs on them. So I had this one at one point of time, and now I have a larger refrigerator, but it's still plain, it's not floral. And I personally would not buy, like, as the example states, right? I would not buy that. But you know you have to think about the user and not your preferences, and to overcome that, it's really hard. I mean, I remember, so you have to use the concepts and the concepts like taking theoretical approach and understanding it from very reasoning point of view or logic point of view. Then how, what works, what composition works, what color works, more than what you like. So I wouldn't just go about drawing these and I'm liking it, yeah, that looks good. It's not that. So there is a certain structure to it. For example, the last one you see here, right, that's probably my favorite one, and it didn't really sell a lot because that's not specifically what a user wants in the industry. So if is that what you're talking about, Diveshi? Is this something else?
Yes, yes, yes.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
And all right, any other question, Sanjay?
Yeah, we have one more. That can you tell us about user metrics that could rightly measure success of design?
All right. Okay. Yeah, that's also a great one, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think I mentioned somewhere that I think in the brief, right? So yeah, so in the brief I talked about key facts, right? So what I meant here in the key fact, I gave you an example also, like it's just a stat like daily active user, right, or monthly active users, DAO, MAU, DAR, MAS. These are all terminologies you'll come to know, and a, a f- a metric in itself doesn't actually give the success of a product, right? In I mean, until it's relative to a state before or after. So that's the reason why I said that during brief, and any metric can be used to evaluate the success of your product, and it's not necessary to go after the most popular ones or most frequent ones, but anything that can be quantified. First of all, for example, daily active users, how many users are active every day on your application, for example. So that's one stat which can be quantified and which has a value. So you take that before the research and you take that after the research. So I'm saying that it's not just that. A lot of times, even in OnePlus, I would say currently also, there's a lot of different ways we measure that. So for example, even qualitative ones, which are really harder to I would say harder to evaluate. So for example, we have a particular forum which is like the OnePlus forum community forum, and therein we have we constantly take feedback with the user. What's this and what's that. We have user bases like which are closed beta testing users, open beta testing users. So we frequently visit them and ask them opinions. So from there we also get qualitative metrics. So I would say don't really go after metrics. I think it's very I would say that just using a common few popular metrics is not the point. The point is, because a lot of times that will not be the case. you'll be working on something which may not essentially increase the active users or monthly footfall or something like that, but essentially it will enhance an experience which will be good for the current users, which may not bring in more users and things like that. So it depends on the project, I would say.
Yeah, Bharat, I think to add on to your point, for me, metrics are variables. So as you already mentioned, we can have different set of variables, combination of variables to understand something. And also it depends on research question that you have. Depending on your research question, you can define or whatever, identify or understand the variables, and then you can plan your research accordingly. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. All right.
Mrityunjay, Shantanu has a question.
Yep.
Hello, Bharat.
Hi, sir.
Hi. Don't call me sir. I'm Shantanu. So I have actually two questions. First question is about your job. So will you guys always work on a single project, or you have to deal with multiple projects?
Okay, yeah, sure. I would like to answer that. I usually it's like a lot of projects, and uh, that's the thing. Like, I mean, there are a lot of things. So depending on what the product pipeline is like, and depending on what are the vision, mission of the the industry and the org, usually it's either I would usually categorize into two different kind of projects, which are like ad hoc and need based, and sometimes it's like driven by design, driven by research, and which are long term and which are new product developments, but not necessarily adaptive designs. So I would say a lot of times it's usually 3 or 4 adaptive and improvements that are already going on, and rarely do such an opportunity come wherein you get a project which you are taking your absolutely all your bandwidth is involved in that project, so that you can't take any other project. So usually we are working on multiple projects, sir.
Okay. And second, I mean, I told that the last part also, Sataki liked it very much. That sort of how to start from a scratch and then finish it up.
Mm-hmm.
That part is excellent. I mean, I actually use it for my students as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
But the question, or what I missed here, that generally I think is required,
mm-hmm.
is something I would say like a review. That is that missing, or is this something you don't need it? I mean, review in two terms. One is if you have a product, so maybe you launch a prototype,
mm-hmm.
and then you see in your, I mean, within the periphery of your company or some close circles, and then you get the feedback. So that generally falls something what you said about usability or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you launch the final product, would you take the review that after that? Like in softwares or other places, we generally release version 1, version 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, or you generally feel like in designing circuit that no, I mean, this is done, this is end. Now, if I would like to do something new, this shouldn't be version 2. This should be again version 1 of something completely new.
Right. I understand, sir. I think that's a very valid point, and I didn't actually, I had it, but I didn't stress enough on it. I mean, I should have explained more, but I was kind of under pressure for timelines. So I would say that yes, that I think that's very important to go back to what you have done and kind of reanalyze it, and we actually do it in practice also in industry. So I remember clearly. Like I mentioned in the previous projects, there are phases of research, right? So there'll be like phase 1 is user research, phase 2 user evaluation. So like I said, that
right.
Even after this is just for that first initial part when you're broadening your mind about different about the project. But even after this, there are so many different phases of research that it just keeps coming. So everything you do something, you kind of want to assure that is this the right direction we're going, or where else should we go, or what is the feedback on it. So I think that yes, that review is pretty iterative. It kind of goes in a cycle, and every time we do something, we want to review it.
Okay, done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
All right, this is for the students actually. See, one good thing, a very good thing I would say Bharat talked about is, and based on Santanu's question, is that they generally work on multiple projects, right? So those students who are cribbing and crying because of multiple assignments, please understand that's kind of a training process that you are going through. For 2 years down the line, you will be going into a company, you'll be landing up to work somewhere, and there you will be working on multiple projects at a time.
Right.
So, I mean,
Get used to.
that's how it works. Okay, so I think, yeah, Bharat, you want to say something?
No, I was just saying that it's wonderful. I mean, it was just absolute pleasure, sir. It's so awesome. It feels like home. It feels like almost with your camera and the backdrop, and it just feels like I'm actually in the in IIT Kanpur, and having a a casual discussion and frank discussion within home.
Design का talk कैसा होगा रे? ऐसा ही होगा ना?
Yeah, right.
Chal, all right. It was wonderful talking to you and also seeing others.
Yeah.
So we have the next talk starting at 6, I believe.
Yeah.
Mrityunjay, I will be going out on a shoot just now.
Okay.
Just a couple of shots remaining. Shuru karwa dena, I'll join you.
Okay, sure.
If I can reach before that, I'll get started.